South Australia's first diving fatality occurred on Friday the 28th of December 1951 at Port Noarlunga when two brothers, Pat and John Williams, along with their friend Arnold, decided to go spearfishing in the reef. Spearfishing is a type of fishing in which a straight pointed item, such as a spear or a harpoon, is used to impale the fish. It is normally done by scuba diving or snorkeling. John and Pat Williams plan to utilise some of their rebreather equipment, although the exact type is unknown. It was most likely World War II firefighter units or antique gas masks that had been modified. The trio walked south of the reef towards an area known as the Gap, and the two brothers commenced their dive in around 6 metres of water. Arnold was there to hold on to the safety line as it was John's first dive. Although it was his first dive, John was a champion swimmer, so he felt confident, and at first the tide was low and conditions were good. John surfaced and swam back to the rocks after a short while of being in the waters, whilst Pat continued. Arnold encouraged him to warm up in the sun before diving again because he was getting blue from the cold and the tide was starting to come in. Because the water conditions were deteriorating and they were running out of time, John opted to undertake his final dive without any breaks. Arnold had explained to John that the waves were interfering with his line signals, so to be more particular. Sometimes diver safety can depend on underwater communication, so they use line signals to communicate with the line tender, which in this case was Arnold. John said to Arnold he would be more careful and entered the water again around 6 metres south of where his brother was diving. Just a few minutes later, Arnold received a strong pull on the rope and hauled it up to help John resurface. John then appeared and Arnold reached down to help his friend out of the water. Suddenly, John jerked back and fell back in. Arnold was taken aback by this and assumed he had dropped his speargun and had gone down to retrieve it. As the minutes passed by, he became increasingly concerned, but he resisted the urge to jump into the turbulent water. Time ticked on, and Arnold's worry began increasing when suddenly Pat surfaced. Arnold informed Pat of what had happened, which made Pat quickly swim to the area John had dived to look for his younger brother. Pat quickly located his body, which was sitting upright on a rocky ledge approximately 3 metres below the surface. He then tied the line to him, and Arnold assisted Pat in dragging John's body back up to the reef. However, John was not moving. Arnold ran back to get help, whilst Pat did all he could to aid his brother. He gave mouth-to-mouth resuscitation, but the waves continued to break over the reef, hindering his efforts. Arnold attempted to return to Pat after requesting assistance, but was washed off the reef and had to be rescued by local lifesavers. John unfortunately was unable to be resuscitated. Hypothermia, anoxia, and exhaustion were contributed to his death. As this happened in the 1950s, all official records have vanished. There is no additional information accessible. It was, however, reported in papers that he had made his own diving outfit and rebreather and most likely exhausted his oxygen supply and suffocated. Williams died a few weeks before his son was born, and his death was recorded as the first diving fatality in South Australian waters. He was buried in Cheltenham Cemetery on the 31st of December 1951, and it was almost 10 years before another case was recorded.